Welcome everyone, today we have a new guide for the updated Warlock. Yes, after the nerf of the Warlock with the warding game, I have been looking towards updating our Warlock for over 1000 corruption. And in this video, I'll be demonstrating to you guys my current setup and also the ability to deal pretty sizable damage with 900 level corruption. We could easily push over 1000 corruption with this build, but currently I think I'm okay with sitting on 900 corruption just farming. You can see that the monsters are melting in front of us. This is because I have incorporated additional ways of gaining more damage for the higher level corruptions. Together with gaining tons of warding, which keeps me up over 10,000, 20,000 and sometimes close to 30,000 warding with the right skill combination, you can be surviving while dealing tons of damage. Well, what is the trade-off, you might be asking? Well, the trade-off is that we have taken away our mobility skill with a Ghost Flame. And this means we can't ride a little bike around, which gains a lot of movement speed and spends a lot of mana. So right now we're just running around, blinking around with Fissure and summoning a lot of spirits, summoning a lot of minions to be absorbing to gain tons of warding. There are some requirements to help you survive in the higher stage of the corruption, like say having over 1000 or 1500 minion life. And there's other ways of getting you surviving with increased armor and also other abilities. So in this video, we'll look into the rotation of the skills, which is quite simple and also quite straightforward compared to the previous one. We are still casting the Bone Prison, and this allows us to absorb minions. Together with Wandering Spirit, we can be gaining a lot of more warding, as you can see over here, close to 20,000 warding each time I cast my rotations. And before I engage the enemies, I will always be doing this. So this keeps me close to 20,000 warding most of the time. And I'm super survivable with additional armor and also with additional mobility by blinking around with my Fissure. And yes, you can see most of the time monsters are dying within 1 or 2 hits, and I don't even have to get to my 40 stacks of increased damage to kill them in one shot and 900 corruption. Now briefly coming over to the boss. I have been using the mobility and also elemental resistant boots, but at the boss I do recommend trying the damage setup. So this particular boot with Valiant's Carrot, this allows us to have increased damage with increased movement speed and also allows our movement speed to deal more damage, which is very important because our Cathartic Fissure is now a movement speed. Now I'll go through the rotation of the skills shortly with you guys, and you can see having this ability, I was able to take down this 400 corruption shade within a few seconds. Now after this, I'll show you guys a 900 boss fight. I want to demonstrate to you guys a variety of the fights, so you can see at different stages of the game, you can be doing tons of damage. And yes guys, I'm in the Circle of Fortune with my Warlock, this is why there's so many items each time I take them down. So coming over to the boss. There has been an ongoing problem with fighting the story boss today, and I do want to mention this in this video. So notice I can't get to the boss, right? So what you need to do is, you need to fix this by going to the previous mini zones of the timeline quest. So notice how there are 2 optional timeline quests. You have to do the optional timeline quest before the boss and then do the boss. So yes, if you guys are having trouble to fix it, you have to do the optional quest. And hopefully this gets fixed. If it doesn't, hopefully this explains why and also how you can fight the story boss due to the bug. Now right away with the timeline boss at 900 corruption, you can see that we deal tons of damage. And this is at the time when my gears are not minimal and also maximum out, because my previous gear has to be swapped, and this made me having not the right base, not right stats, and losing a lot of damage. And even with that, within a few seconds, we take the bounce down into half HP. And the rotation is very straightforward. You'll be casting spells to protect yourself while dealing more damage. And you can see, within a few seconds more, we take down the boss with no problem. As long as you're using your spells correctly and avoid getting one-shot by the boss. Yes, we don't have over 60 or 50,000 warding to tank one-shot abilities now. You do want to avoid the one-shot ability, but other than that, the skill rotations are very straightforward, and you shouldn't have any problems with any of the boss over 1000 corruption. Now I have mentioned the skill rotation multiple times, so I thought it's a good time to introduce the skills and rotations of this build if you haven't seen it, and there are some updates. I'm currently using these flame gloves and also the belt, which allows me to gain stacks of increased spell damage up to 240 flat spell damage when I self-burn. I'll be self-burned by giving myself bleed, and these gloves will turn bleeding into burn. So what I'm doing is, for the offensive rotation, I'm holding down the button for Spirit Plague, so I get 40 stacks and then I cast my Fissure. And this allows the damage to be captured, stored and snapshotted when I have 40 stacks. And this in return will deal tremendous damage over time. And this is offensive combination. For the defensive combination, I'll be casting Bonus Curse, Wandering Spirit, and then Profane Veil, which will allow me to gain additional warding based on the 2 minion abilities. So here I'll show you guys the rotation. And here, we easily go over 20,000 warding if I had another minion around me or enemies around me. And even without anything around me, I go close to 20,000 warding. And this is incredibly powerful defensive. And that summarizes the rotation of the spells. I'll briefly go into more of the rotations with more tips on the second part of the video. Now over here, I have prepared 2 different builders guide with the change of the boots and also relic for you guys for more variety and also more adjustment. The gear FXs, I'll explain them briefly, and the biggest change of course guys is that we'll be going with 2000 minion health. And having this much minion health in return will allow us to get close to 28,000 warding, you can see over here on my replays, and this will keep you alive in the late stage of the corruption. Now before we dive into the builder's guide, I do want to give a big shout out for the initial original creator of this self-burn build, which is the Curse. He has been updating this build and I have been learning and also making my own variants and also adjustment to my build. So definitely a big shout out to the Curse, and if you guys haven't seen his videos, he makes a really good detailed guide. So I have the links to his videos and also YouTube channel available. He also streams if you want to ask him questions live with Twitch. Now if you haven't seen my previous Warlock guide, we do have a lot of updates, detailed explanations to the build. So definitely check out this video guide if you want more information for the build. I'll try to be brief because this is the updated build, but in the previous videos we explained the Warlock and also the mechanics in more details. So coming over to my endgame first version of the build, this version will be more expensive than the second version, which uses Exalted item and a little weaker relic, which is easier to get to 3 legendary potential. So as my first setup, we're going with increased minion health on most of the gears, including the helmet, the amulet, the rings, and also the belt, and also the gloves. This is how I was able to get to 2000 minion health, and I do think it's a good time to stop around 2000 minion health. If I keep getting minion health, I will be sacrificing some bonus damage and also other form of utility. Having 2000 or 1500 minion health is definitely enough. Now just to show you guys in game, currently I'm only sitting on 1000 minion health, and if you guys remember in the replays, I was getting over to 28,000 warding just with 1000 minion health. And I think with my ideal build and also this version, if you can get to 2000 minion health, you're pretty much set for 1000 corruption to 1500 corruption with this build in terms of defensiveness. And this will of course coming from having the tier 7 FX rolls on most of the gears. I did not go with minion health on my chest because I wanted more intelligence and also increased skill level of my Cathartic Fissure. So here we're going with 26 level of Cathartic Fissure, and this will allow me to enjoy most of the skill multipliers, which deals tons of damage. I'm sure you guys know the uncap, narcotic resistance, and also why we go with the critical multipliers with those passives. Now over here, one thing to highlight, we're turning our Cathartic Fissure into a traversal spell, and this becomes a movement spell which is incredibly powerful with the new addition of these boots. The unique effect of these boots is that we'll be increasing damage based on increased movement speed, and that's why we're going with tier 7 movement speed onto the boots. Together with the ability to increase the next movement spell that deals 40% more damage, this single boots will almost double our damage with Cathartic Fissure. And this is amazing to have in this build. Just with one boots, it's both defensive and also offensive. Now if you guys are interested on the damage boost with the boots, so here I have made some dummy tests that I'll provide to you guys at the end of the video. So briefly you can see, after casting my spell rotations and also my combinations, some of the higher damage take 70,000, 80,000, and this is close to 1 million damage. I'll try to pause correctly so you guys can see some of the damage numbers over here. So yes, you can see this is without using the unique boots, about 70,000, 60,000 with the ticks. So now what I'll do is I'll come over and also I'll swap the boots. So this way you can see the damage boost of using this new setup. And yes, you can see the replays at the end of the video if you want to slow things down. So notice here, my damage is now doubled into 1.2 million, close to 1.3 million damage. And this is with the incorrect items. My items have been changing a lot to accompany for more mini health, and this means I lost a lot of damage. Even with that, guys, this particular set of boots will double your damage. And this is amazing to have if you have the correct combination, and if you can craft those boots with more legendary effects like movement speed and also intelligence. Now, most of the other gear pieces, they're pretty straightforward. We're going with tier 7 critical strike multipliers over here on the wand, and also we're going with tier 7 critical strike multipliers on the amulet steel. One of the reasons I decided to go for this is that this particular amulet is a little rare to find, and it is much harder to get to a 3 legendary potential, so 2 legendary potential is definitely good enough if you can get this one. In terms of the gloves, we're getting tier 7 mini health, intelligence, narcotic resistance whenever we can. So you can see I'm even sealing away narcotic resistance wherever I can. So this way I'm balancing my resistance to 75%, and together with more narcotic resistance means you're doing even more damage. And this in turn will translate into additional warding gain with uncapped narcotic resistance, and even more warding gain with uncapped narcotic resistance now with a Wandering Spirit. So the uncapped narcotic resistance will give us more damage and also more warding. Now, because the current ideal setup for the endgame can be a little expensive to acquire those gears, I have provided to you guys over here with another form of Exalted boots and also an alternative relic which can be crafted with 3 legendary potential, and this relic should be much cheaper and much easier to get. Now, in terms of the skills, because you will have additional skills in Profaned Veil, you can go with additional perks that gives you higher curse damage multiplier, which can be incredible to deal more damage. Now, in terms of the losing of the skill points, you will be losing some skill points overall compared to the first build, simply because you're not getting +1 narcotic spells to levels, and this will give you 1 spells to all levels. And the bigger difference with the 2 relic is that this relic does not provide armor, casting speed, and also additional ward gain. So notice armor over here, it is 47% damage reduction, this one's 41%. And in terms of the casting speed, we get 16% casting speed and also ways to gain converting health into warding. Now, coming back to the skills, we talk about the Cathartic Fissure briefly because its synergies and a combination with the boots. So with the Profaned Veil, we'll be absorbing minions, and right now we'll be revealing Wandering Spirit, which will give us additional warding based on uncapped narcotic resistance. We have increased the volume or the area with the Profaned Veil. If you guys finding you want more damage, you can take away the 3 points over here and come back over here. But just in order we can survive, I have taken away some damage over here. I have also put in 4 points over here. This particular passive is quite important, because if I cast my Profaned Veil, notice the cooldowns will go down, right? But if I cast my curse, the cooldown goes down even faster. So having 4 points over here means my cooldown reduction is even faster. And it's actually really important to have this one if you want to survive by constantly casting your Profaned Veil. Now, the new addition of the spells is Wandering Spirit, which have taken over the mobility spell with Ghost Flame. Wandering Spirit will give us even more spirits and also even more spirits. Together with the ability to lower cooldowns and also lower mana costs and also gain more warding, we can even shed some resistance against enemies. And this Wandering Spirit will be used and provide us with additional warding because of this passive. Now, in terms of Bone Curse, we have adjusted towards more defensive capacities with the ability to provide ourselves with Bone Armor. And Bone Armor is going to be very good in terms of defensiveness. Together with armor shedding chances, I have taken away the increased damage over here with the Bone Curse. So here's adjustment for the Bone Curse. And finally, for the Spirit Plague, we haven't changed much for the Spirit Plague. Make sure you guys have 5 points over here and 3 points over here with increased casting speed. So this way you can be self-igniting and then in return dealing tons of damage after you cast your fissures. Now, because not much has changed with our passives, I don't need to go too much into that. But in return, guys, if you find yourself needing more warding retention, you can come over here and put 5 points in this. And in return, you can take away some points over here which will give us more offensiveness. Which at the moment, I don't think I need that much defense, so I didn't go with the warding retention. But this is definitely available if you guys want to come over here. Now, in terms of the idols and also blessings, I'm going with as many as curse spell damage increase as I can, together with narcotic damage increase. And after that, I was a little short on poison resistance, and this is why I have this over here. Together with as much necrotic resistance and damage over time with a 1x1 idol, this gives us the most damage and also defensiveness. In terms of the blessings, we're going with critical strike multiplier as much as we can. So as a reminder guys, this is a multiplicative damage increase for damage over time by having higher damage critical multiplier. And here we go with our resistance, increase armor, and also finally gaining warding per second. We're no longer needing additional mana because we're not using Ghost Flame. And having warding per second also on the catalyst gave us more survivability. Now in terms of the loot filter for this build, I have incorporated into my multi-loot filter. And there's a tier 6 and also tier 7 version. Make sure you guys only pick the ones with Warlock and unclick other ones if you don't plan to use this. You can unclick over here or you can delete them directly if you don't plan to play the build. But this multi-loot filter will allow you to find multiple items for different classes and also different build. Just look for the name for the Warlock over here and you should be able to use the loot filters in the description below. Now briefly going through the skill rotation in the fights. Before I fight, I'll try to cast my spell combo so I can be gaining a bit of warding. So here I'll be casting my Bone Curse, which gives us Bone Prison to be absorbed for additional warding. I'll try to keep myself over 8000 warding no matter when I engage enemies. And constantly casting my Spirit Plague will lower the cooldowns of my Perfume Veil, which allows me to do my defensive rotation. So the order of the skills are always defensive rotation, offensive rotation, defensive rotation, and offensive rotation. And if you guys remember at the start of the video, I briefly talked about those two rotations. Make sure you go back to those if you're not sure how to do those. The additional rotation is I will be casting Bone Curse followed by Spirit, Wandering Spirit. But if you don't get the cooldowns for Wandering Spirit, just Bone Curse and also Perfume Veil is enough. You can cast Bone Curse, Wandering Spirit, and Perfume Veil to give you the highest warding, but sometimes just the two is enough. And most of the time guys, you don't have to go to 40 stacks of burn for the most damage. Monsters will melt even at 1000 corruption with just 10-20 stacks of burn. And this is definitely enough no matter what you fight. And of course against the boss, you want to maximum damage to 40 stacks. Now briefly coming over to the shape boss. Before the boss fight, I usually stack up defensive rotation first, so before the boss even sees me, I have tons of warding. And then I'll lay out the offensive rotation, and now we start with the rest of the repeating of the rotations. Defensive, offensive, defensive, offensive. So against this 400 corruption boss, we don't really have a problem. I tanked his one-shot ability, and I was able to kill him very quickly using a new setup. Now in terms of the higher level corruption bosses, you still want to use the same combination, but keep in mind guys, your Cathodic Fissure is now a movement spell, which allows you to dodge bosses' abilities and also move around them. Together with abilities to dodge the boss's one-shot ability using a Perfume Veil, you want to time yourself correctly. Because we're not getting too much warding, we can't tank everything now. But having the knowledge of the boss's rotations here, I was able to tank his I was able to dodge the one-shot ability and then in return dealing more damage afterwards. Now if you guys find my videos and also guides helpful and also want to support my passion in making more guides and also more videos for the last Epoch and also more games to come like Path of Exile, please consider joining me on Patreon, and also here I have created my Ko-Fi page. You can also support me directly through donations, but supporting me continuously with one of those memberships will mean a lot for my future updated videos and to become financially sustainable so I can be continuing making videos for you guys and doing what I love the most, and that is to share and also teach our communities as I dive into different games and making more guides for you guys. And as you guys gonna see in the future, I'll have different ranks and also perk advantages and also special events and also special features for members like account reviews, perfecting the build for you guys, and also co-op time play, and also even special future videos for you guys on your special build for different members.
Will not take me. not take me.